Brock Purdy timeline updated and good news on the UCL surgery and recovery for one Brock Purdy. Does that mean he's a shoo-in for the starting job? Does Trey Lance even have a chance? What about Sam Darnold? What about their play so far in OTAs? All coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers. We'll be talking with our weekly guest, Mr. Nicholas Winkler, on tomorrow's program and getting into some more undrafted free agent prospects and the deep dive scouting reports and, of course, everything going on with your San Francisco 49ers as we get ready for the 2023 season.
We also got to rewatch, and maybe we could tee this up for something that's coming up soon. All right, we are going to go back and watch Kyle Shanahan's offense with the Atlanta Falcons, and then, kind of go back, watch some games from last year, and just try to find, okay, what exactly was the difference? Because I know in my head, I just have this super high power, throwing the ball all around, throwing the ball down the field, and that's kind of what you remember, but a lot of times you kind of see highlights and things like that. So it's going to be fun going back and watching it and then maybe seeing, this actually looks just like the 49ers offense. And again, I don't know if it is, but I can't wait to go back, watch that, and then kind of relay the information, what we find, to our listeners on what the difference is, or is it very similar?
And on a similar note, I want to talk a little bit about the 2017 end of year Jimmy G, because I went back and watched that recently. And just to remind myself what that looked like a little bit earlier in the offseason, I did that. And I think that correlates to something else that we're going to talk about here with OTAs and some of the drills and some of the quarterbacks the 49ers have now. And you know what? Yeah, it's like the vibe is, and I know the numbers were very different for Matt Ryan's Atlanta Falcons with under Kyle Shanahan. But how different did it look is what I want to know. Like the numbers were clearly different, but how different was it really? So yeah, that'll be a fun episode. And I'm glad you reminded me because I did not have that in my notes. And now that is officially written in ink on my notepad. Croc, the latest from 49ers beat writer Matt Mayoko in an article at NBC Sports. I want to throw A's on everything. NBC Sports Bay Area. The recent vibe coming out of 49ers headquarters suggests a belief Brock Purdy is the favorite to be the team's starting quarterback when the season opens September 10th at the Steelers. He goes on to say, Brock Purdy began throwing regulation NFL football. He began throwing the regulation NFL football May 29. If the anticipated 12-week ramp-up program holds true, he would receive full clearance on or around August 21st, or 20 days before the regular season opener. Now, look, it's not any breaking news that the vibe coming out of the 49ers headquarters is that Brock Purdy is the favorite to be the team starting quarterback, because they've told us that. They said he's the leader in the clubhouse. Like, so we know that. But I think the update here on the timeline that's pertinent, Croc, is that everything has gone as good as possible for his recovery so far. So unless there's any setbacks, and as long as his arm is where it was before, and he'll have a chance to showcase that in practice some point before the season, then there's really no time, right, for anybody to take the job away from him.
Yeah, no, I think our biggest question was, will he have any time prior to week one, right? Because the original timeline kind of had him available right at week one. It's like, man, this guy, okay, he's been throwing a little bit, but how much has he been throwing? Has he been live for you to kind of clear him? And then, all right, it's going to be 100% all out. You didn't get any time in any preseason games or anything like that, but we're going to throw you in week one against the Pittsburgh Steelers with TJ Watt on the opposite side. And we know what he does to guys. As a matter of fact, I mean, that's scary in itself, because this guy comes
Watt versus Colton McKivitz getting his the brand new starter at right tackle for the 49ers, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
49er fans familiar with TJ Watt?
They better be. That dude is, I think as a pure pass rusher, he's better than Nick Bosa.
He is arguably, because there's three guys, right? There's Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, and then Y. And then now Michael Parsons, as he
yeah.
starts to be a full-time edge. But
Those are the
as
dudes.
far as like the big dogs, right? Like who've been doing it, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, and Watt. And Watt, you can ask 10 people and you can get 10 different combinations of what those top 3 are. But a lot of people would say Watt is maybe arguably like the best edge rusher. So, we're worried about the recovery of the elbow. Hopefully it's 100% because that guy is coming around that corner, especially if it's going against Colt McKivitz.
And that's that side, right? So
Yeah.
first snap since, him getting hurt, and now he did play some snaps after that in the NFC Championship game, but that's, the strong side. That's the side where his arm is Brock Purdy going to be comfortable stepping up. And that will be the first game, if he doesn't play any preseason games, that he'll be on the field since then. So that's where things get a little bit dicey, even that early in the process being cleared. How much will they have seen? How much work? The big question I still don't know, and we'll find out in training camp, is how much work will he get in training camp? How many? What sort of drills and activities during training camp when he's not fully cleared? He's going to have a colored jersey on, and he's going to be no contact, and he's not going to do 11-on-11 stuff with pass rush. I'm pretty sure of that until he's 100% cleared. But what other drills is he doing? Is there enough for him to show that he's ready mentally and clearly ahead of the other guys? So that'll be a big question for me.
Yeah. Typically, by the time they officially clear you, you've been able to do a lot of stuff prior to that, right? Remember when Jimmy Garoppolo, like, when was he cleared last offseason? And I know it was kind of weird because it was like, hey, stay away, but not away, but on the field,
Yeah.
but stay away from the team, but throw the ball. All the fans can watch you throw it. Then you just go hide out in the weight room, right? It was kind of this weird dynamic.
Yeah, I
But
think he was fully cleared in camp, or he would have been, but I don't think they even actually fully cleared him or something like that. I mean, it was a foggy situation.
I think that could be the case with Brock Purdy, where he probably could, like, he could do everything, but he's not 100% cleared for full-on contact. So I think he'll be throwing the ball. He's able to throw to all levels of the field. He's able to throw the ball down the field. They're just going to check and make sure, hey, does he have any elbow pain? Okay, let's give him a day off. Okay, bring him back. He's doing everything full. And then when they feel like, all right, he can throw 100 passes without any type of pain or anything, then, okay, you're full go. And
Right.
full go in practice, in training camp. First of all, at the professional level and college level, high school as well, you cannot touch the quarterback.
No.
So he can be full go in team without, worrying about somebody like hitting the ball out of his hand and messing his elbow up. And that's something I'm always scared of when it comes to quarterbacks. But
But they wouldn't even put him in there just in case someone falls and trips and gets,
because you never know.
incidental contact that happens to at practice. So he would never get into that practice mode unless he's fully cleared.
Is there anything you're worried about with him? I like, because when I think of Brock Purdy, I don't think there's anything I'm worried about. Like, maybe if he was like a power thrower, right? And it's like, hey man, if you lose a little bit of that fastball, like, you're kind of a shell of yourself. Like, think about like a super athletic wingman in basketball, and he kind of loses a step, like, and then now all of a sudden it's like, well, do I have to? Well, I'm not really a jump shooter, right? I don't think his game is predicated on being a power thrower. So even if it does kind of like there's a tick down on just the velocity he's able to throw with, I still think he's going to be fine, because I don't think that's what made Brock Purdy good.
I would disagree there, because I don't think he has enough. He doesn't have enough arm to lose anymore, I would say, because like he would still be okay. It's not like he wouldn't have a career anymore if he lost a couple miles per hour. But he's already teetering on the edge of, man, if you don't have all your cleats in the ground and you don't have your base on you, throws can float, and you can't be late. So you got to be on time with everything because you can't power through. He's already kind of in that range anyway. So if he loses miles per hour on his fastball, does that sort of start to take away some of the digs and some of the deeper intermediate stuff where he's still able to put enough on it, and does he just become like a true dink and dunk guy? Right? Well, this guy's kind of a backup because he just can't make enough throws. That would worry me a little bit.
Okay.
So
I don't know. I don't think his game is like, when I watch him, it's timing, rhythm, some play action stuff, not really driving the ball, not really the drive throws. Even when he does throw the ball down the field, it's not like, think about the touchdown to Brandon Ayuk. Like, it's like, okay, I got to get it out there. I'm about to take a hit. I just have to kind of get it out there, right? The touchdown to George Kittle with Ray McCloud fighting for the ball. It's like, I just kind of have to get it out there, but it's not throws where it's like, man, I have to put this on a frozen rope to the only spot. And I'm talking about like really drive a throw in between people and, a layered throw. Like that's not really how he was winning. And when I say winning, I just mean on a down and down basis. It was everything else, just slants, I'm gonna throw it in a good spot. Dig, okay, I'm gonna throw it with nice timing and everything, and the ball's gonna be there. Check downs, I'm accurate, I'm gonna put it on the guy. Like it was a lot of that. And I don't know if a tick down in his arm strength is gonna affect the way that he necessarily played last year. I think he'd still be 67% completion percentage guy, still throw. I mean, still give guys the yards at the catch opportunities. I don't know how much it'll hurt him because that's not his game. Just isn't predicated on velocity.
I would say there's a few throws where he's kind of given it some effort, and there's some zip on the passes in the intermediate area, and it's good arm strength for those throws. And I wouldn't want those throws to take longer. Especially with those tight windows. I mean, we saw the Jimmy Garoppolo interceptions and some of the darts he threw. And I don't think people give Jimmy Garoppolo enough credit for some of the small windows he was hitting because teams know it's coming. Like they've got the robber coming down. They know that dig route's coming. They throw it more than any other route on the in the offense, so they know it's coming, and you're gonna have to throw it between three dudes, and you have to hit a spot. And the more zip you have, the better. So
there was a throw by him, and I know we're gonna get into Trey Lance throwing in OTAs right now. But there was a throw that Trey missed in the OTA practice, like to a random guy catching the ball.
Oh yeah. I want to talk about that clip for sure.
Yeah, but I'll get into or what people will remember, and we'll kind of tee it up. I want to say, was it intercepted by the Las Vegas Raiders? Did Purdy throw an interception that game?
He threw 3 picks. I'm trying to picture what they were.
All right. So, anyways, there was this play where they ran that route where it's kind of the play action kind of roll. The same route Trey Lance threw a touchdown to Deebo Samuel on. Trey Lance threw a touchdown to Trent Sherfield in the preseason on. Like that route. Jimmy Garoppolo threw a touchdown to George Kittle on it. And Brock Purdy, when he dropped back, again, talked about cleats in the ground and everything. He couldn't throw it far enough.
Right. No, yeah. That's what I'm talking about with Purdy. And people are like, I can make all the throws. Like, there's like stuff like that when it's not perfect and he doesn't have his platform underneath him, and like he doesn't have that much margin for error, and that's what I would worry about arm strength wise. And then imagine having less arm after the injury.
Yeah, and that one, it wasn't one where you had to be a power thrower. You just have to throw it up and like up in a way and just let the guy run underneath it. And he just couldn't quite get enough on that. Like it didn't have to be a 2-ball, right? Like just kind of hard with an arc, kind of a layered throw, where it is. You maybe have to have a little bit bigger of an arm and get it. Yeah, it wasn't one of those. It was just like, you just got to throw it out there. And he like really kind of threw it short. So, but again, I don't think that's necessarily has to be his game anyway.
It's not a big portion. It's not a big percentage of throws like that.
Right.
And even the deep balls, I mean, he can throw like, not a crazy deep ball. He's not throwing the Josh Allen 60 air yards deep balls, on time or anything like that. But he can get up early and throw it, and it's got nice touch, and it's where it needs to go, right? But again, if he's a little bit late on that, and or if he's his base is a little off and he's moved off a spot and he doesn't have all his cleats in the ground, then that's where you worry a little bit about Brock Purdy and his ceiling as just a pure thrower. And if he loses from there, I think that could be potentially a problem.
I'd be more worried about Josh Allen losing velocity than Brock Purdy.
Because he relies on it more.
Yeah.
Because see, that's the thing is he can wait a tick longer because he can get it there a tick quicker.
Right.
Okay, next, a little bit more on Brock Purdy, the timeline there, what it means. Can he get in a preseason game potentially? And if that's a wrap, and Trey Lance and some of the drills. And I want to talk a little bit about Shanahan, the way he coaches up his quarterbacks, and a little bit of the Jimmy Garoppolo stuff as well. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Yes, it's FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sports book. NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. How about some NFL futures? How about this? How about regular season special bets for the San Francisco 49ers? Nick Bosa to record 15-plus sacks in the regular season. The 49ers to score 1+ touchdown in every regular season game. McCaffrey to score 10+ rushing touchdowns during the regular season. Brock Purdy to throw 30+ passing touchdowns in the regular season. Tons of those. You can bet on week 1. Niners favored by 3 at Pittsburgh. So many ways to bet, so many sports to bet, and of course, all the playoff action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Brock Purdy's timeline, and Matt Mayoko's article goes on to say, again, you can find it at NBCsports.com/Bay Area. If his road to full recovery stays true to the 12-week time frame, he would receive full medical clearance to play football around August 21st, 20 days before the start of the 2023 NFL season. And that's the other part of this that's like, it's still gray area. This is a relatively new procedure. We don't have a lot of data on exactly when players come back. And right now they're on the most aggressive timeline for Brock Purdy. And it was sort of a quote unquote 6-month timeline. But if you break it down into weeks instead of months, you're actually gaining a few days if you're just looking at it from 24 weeks, 6 4-week stages. And the first half was the first part was like, he's got the brace on, can't move it. Then he works on mobility. And now he's in the second half of that. And the final 12-week time frame is him building up his arm and his throwing program. So that's where he's at right now. And so if it was just straight 24 months, that would be August 21st, which puts him a couple days fully cleared before the final preseason game, which is August 25th at home against the Chargers. And the second preseason game is on the 19th. So, maybe even if he's ahead of schedule, could be 100% cleared by the Broncos' second preseason game. And look, I don't know if he would get any preseason. I don't know if they would put him in the game even if he was 100% cleared. And again, it goes back to training camp. How much did he practice all camp? But Kyle Shanahan has said that his understanding was once Brock Purdy's 100%, that's it. There's no worry of ramping up from there. No worry about more injury risk of getting hit, all that stuff. Once you're clear and you're 100%, you're done. And that's it. And so that's where it's like, okay, so, and I'm trying to think. So if you're going to play Brock Purdy in the final preseason game, you're going to want your starters in there blocking for him, right? So I can't remember the third preseason game with the new 3 preseason game format, Croc. Did the 49ers have starters out there in preseason game number 3?
Oh, I remember. That was the Houston Texans game. And they did have some starters out there, but their tackles didn't start. So there was no McGlinchey there. And I want to say maybe McGlinchey was coming off of an injury, but there was no McGlinchey and there was no Trent Williams. And that was the game where I was like, this dude Trey Lance has no chance back there. Remember, it was like, catch a snap, and then the guys were back there, and I was like, damn, if you don't throw it right now, it's over. And he was kind of fighting for his life out there. But the receivers were out there the receivers were out there for a drive or so, if I remember correctly. But then after that, they kind of came out. Kyle wanted to keep Trey Lance in there, but they really just could not protect him.
Yeah. I do remember that.
I don't think you want to deal with that with Brock Purdy. It's like, hey, week 1, hey, we're confident. Our guys are 100% right now. We would love to play him just so we can kind of get that live action. But man, I don't, how much do you trust these tackles? And McKinnon was one of them.
I've always thought that really the time frame needed to be, and just listening to Kyle Shanahan talk about Brock Purdy, is a full week of practice before week 1. So it wouldn't even have to be the final preseason game, but at some point, maybe that week or right there where he can come in, you're 100% cleared, boom, you can practice a full week, get ready for week 1. And
I think 2 weeks now though, right?
But yeah, there's that extra week in between. So you would get plenty of time there to practice. But if he could get a preseason game in, I'm sure that'd be helpful for him. I'm sure that'd be helpful for Kyle to make a decision. They'll do the thing where Trey starts the first preseason game, Sam Darnold starts the second preseason game, and then Brock Purdy starts the third preseason game, right? I could totally see that happening. And it's a true competition, but is it really?
No, you know why you can't do that?
Why?
Because as much as, and I believe in what Brock Purdy is, he is a gamer. I wouldn't want I wouldn't want him to have a stinker.
You just wouldn't want to show it, right? Yeah,
I would not want to show that yet. Like if he's gonna have a stinker, let it be week 1, but we have our defense that can back him. I don't want him to get into a game where it's just like, man, he hasn't really. And when I say a stinker, it's because like just live, like things that 1,000 miles an hour, and having to be more of an anticipatory thrower and all that. Even though it's preseason, still it's like, man, I haven't felt this really yet because I just don't have a whole lot of live action. So I wouldn't want, for as much confidence as they have in him, and I believe week 1 he'd hit the ground running and be fine. But you can deal more with the stinker week 1 and say, oh well, he's coming off of an injury, as opposed to you put him in the preseason and depending on how the first 2 guys look. If hypothetically speaking, let's say Trey Lance has what we saw against Green Bay Packers, where it's 4 or 5, even though there were some little off targets or whatever, but he completes 4 out of his 5 passes and a 75-yard touchdown. And I think he ran for like a first down, like third down or something like that, right? So you have that. And then Sam Darnold comes in, he plays well, whatever. And then Brock Purdy comes in, who's the guy you're like, oh, that's the guy. And it looks weird. Yeah, if I'm Kyle, I don't want that. So let's just hold off. Like that's what I would say.
Is it okay? Would it be worse for him to look rusty in the preseason finale, or to not have his timing with TJ Watt coming off the corner against Colton McKivitz in week 1, which is what got him hurt, not getting rid of the ball on time?
Earlier I asked, have 49er fans watch TJ Watt? Now listen, I don't have the stats up in front of me, but I don't know if anybody forces more fumbles hitting quarterbacks' arms in the pocket than TJ Watt. I feel like he's always forcing fumbles. He's always doing something.
Got these crazy condor arms. He can beat you with speed to power. He can beat you around the corner.
Gosh.
And actually, I take it back. I keep talking about Colton McKivitz. It's actually going to be Cameron Latou blocking Jim Watt by himself, right?
Oh yeah. See, nah, man. I don't want to play him. You want to just because you want to get that. You want to get that. Start to get things going in the right direction. But man,
I would rather him stink and get some timing and play a preseason game if he's cleared.
Listen to this.
And you just have him come out and drop a couple short balls off. It's like, hey, just get the ball out quick, whatever. Just to feel the timing of the game, feel an actual defense against him. I think that would be more helpful than jumping in against TJ Watt in week 1 without any playing time.
So I have TJ Watt's numbers pulled up in front of me. All right, we've been kind of hyping him up and the type of edge rusher he is as it pertains to just Brock Purdy first, and you line up and that guy's across from you.
Yeah.
How many? Let's say out of his career, he's played 6 seasons. What do you think the most forced fumbles in a season is for him?
Oh, well, shoot. Last year, I know he was hurt half of the year.
Yeah, he was hurt a lot of the year.
And then he was defensive player of the year before that.
22.5 sacks.
22.5 sacks. I think he had 20 the year before that too, right? Or 19.
15, 14.5, 13. He's had a lot, but
yeah,
22.5 was his best. That's a hell of a lot of sacks.
Like if you have like 4 forced fumbles in a season, that's a lot.
He's had, first of all, over 6 seasons, he's had 23 forced fumbles, and that's with him not playing a full season last year. He in one season, year 3,
averaging almost 4 a season.
Year 3, he had 8 forced fumbles.
Whew.
So year 2, he had 6. Year 3, he had 8. And then in the defensive player of the year season, he had 5. So this is a guy who's when he's coming. And again, you see those numbers, it's whatever. But I'm only worried about it because of Brock Purdy's arm. Now, again, you can hit anybody's arm and it can get hurt. But how is your arm more or less? And I don't know. We can get Coach Desi on here to talk about it. But is your arm more or less susceptible to be re-injured after kind of having that injury to his elbow?
Supposedly not. That's what Kyle said. That there's no, once he's 100% cleared, you don't have to worry about the arm strength. You don't have to worry about the risk of injury, apparently.
Okay.
So I don't know. We'll see. He's not the biggest guy either. And we saw with Jimmy Garoppolo, it's not like you have to have the same injury every time either. So next, let's talk a little bit about Trey Lance. Does he even have a shot? And some of the clips from him in OTAs next. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Appreciate all the everydayers out there. If you're not an everydayer, make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Myself and Matt Williamson, former NFL scout, former ESPN scribe, coming at you every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering the entire league. Kyle Shanahan loves the wide stance drill, the wide base drill, where they're over the pylons and stepping and throwing. And there's a now semi-viral clip of Trey Lance at OTAs doing that and airmailing, somebody who's catching footballs on the side in a t-shirt. I don't know what his job is or what coach or equipment person that is on the side, but I
feel like they have a lot of guys that they all look kind of the same, and they're all just out there like catching a lot of balls, or they're running around with the beanies on their head. You want routes on the air when it's the coaches doing it. It's kind of like this crew of guys where it's just like, all right, this is your job, catch the balls and act like Steve.
Exactly. Yeah. Corral the balls and bring it back to us. And so, and obviously I can't take anything from a clip in some drill in OTAs, and people are making a big deal out of it. But what's interesting is, isn't that sort of the base that the new coach, the throwing coach he was working with, was trying to get him away from doing that? Like this, I wonder if because Kyle loves it. He had Jimmy doing that all the time. He has he's talked about that's his favorite drill for quarterbacks, is keeping that wide base and keeping your feet moving, keeping them under you wide and ready to throw and snapping it off with your upper body. But that was what Jeff Christensen was working with Trey Lance to do less of, I thought. And this is how it ties in with Jimmy Garoppolo, because I went back and watched Jimmy Garoppolo in 2017 when he just showed up with the 49ers, had that 5-game stretch. And man, he had so much more in his lower half. He was more athletic. He was getting out of the pocket, making plays. The way the ball came out of his hands, it just seemed like more of his bottom half was in the throws and a little bit more on his throws. And I thought, man, the injuries really took something out of Jimmy Garoppolo. But now that I think about it, I wonder if Jimmy was always like a really quick snap thrower with his upper body anyway. But I wonder if working with Shanahan made him even more that way. And I wonder if it hurt Jimmy in some ways with the way he threw the ball. And I'm not saying, like, look, I don't know. Like Kyle Shanahan, I'm not saying he doesn't know how to coach quarterbacks. But I'm saying it's just really interesting when I look through it with that lens. Like, I wonder if there is some sort of a disconnect depending on who the quarterback is, what they're comfortable doing, and Kyle's trying to make everybody this one thing.
I think there is a figuring it out process with that, regardless, right? It's just, getting it to be more of a natural movement for you, more muscle memory. And you talked about Jimmy Garoppolo doing it and then trying to work on those things. And I would love to see, before the injury, he played two games in 3 quarters, right? In 2018. What did it look like then? And there were struggles there, right? Like, we're not talking about a Jimmy G who was on fire, throughout the 5 games, did his thing, ball, made the throws, looked good, twitched up, all that stuff. And then, week 1, 2018, the very next year, like, oh man, he's just firing on all cylinders. No, he kind of played like crap, right? I mean, the Vikings game threw 3 interceptions. One was a pick 6. The Lions game, he threw a pick at the end of the game. I mean, even then, he wasn't lighting that game up. I was there with my buddy who's a Lions fan. I'm like, oh my gosh, are we about to lose the Lions? And then obviously you get destroyed by Kansas City. But
yeah, they weren't winning that game whether he got hurt or not.
When he started playing his best in that Kansas City game was when he was just like, we're getting blown out. I'm just gonna let it rip. Yeah. And it was like, damn, that's the best version.
Which is what it looked like in 2017 too. In 2017, it was amazing. Like, I'll never forget that, because the 49ers were awful. They were the worst team in the league. Couldn't win a game. Bad quarterback play, terrible receivers. Jimmy Garoppolo comes out there and he's like, oh, it's not that hard to play quarterback. Here's what you do. That guy's not open. That guy's not open. Read number 3. Oh, he's open. I'm going to throw the ball. It's simple, right? Oh, my God. That's what playing quarterback looks like. I could not believe how simple it was. And it wasn't, the full Shanahan offense, but he never got better after that. So I don't know. It's just something that sticks in the back of my mind.
I've been crushed for saying that about, like, the quarterbacks not really getting better by people. But I will say this, as it pertains to Trey Lance, when you're working on new things, right? And maybe this isn't quite like new, but he has a lot going on right now. It's like, man, I just worked with Jeff Christensen. He has me doing whatever it is, fixing the arm or maybe his feet or whatever. Then I get to OTAs and Kyle has me doing this bag drill. But man, like Jeff is saying I need to be stepping like this, but then now Greasy and Kyle are saying I need to kind of step like this, and I'm working on getting my front foot down, but then my arm, and then whoop, a ball just airmails. And you could say, well, yeah, airmail some passes before in practice, and he did it again, and maybe that's the case. But it also could be working on something new. Now, again, I don't know, and I would have to see, like, is that something that's been consistent in practice? And there are people that are there, feet on the ground. Locked On Network, can you get us there, please? But there are people that are there, and they will know more than you and I with what's been consistent from them. I haven't heard that from anybody that I've talked to, and I'll reach out. I kind of have one source in the building, all right, but I'll reach out and say, hey, man, like, what has it looked like? And they'll give me an honest answer. All right. I don't use my sources too much. You got to kind of pick and choose when you need to use them.
Yeah.
A lot of times I wait for my sources to just kind of tell me stuff. All right. But what has that been consistent? And I don't know. So again, it's not great, but I always look at everything as one rep, even if it's Mike McGlinchey getting thrown to the ground, but he had 60 other plays that were good.
Right.
But he had that one bad play that really sticks out. And for Trey, I think, again, I don't know. I've seen him do the little back drill earlier. One of the first days that OTAs opened up, and it looked good. Doing the back drill, snapping the ball off, boom, he's accurate. And then boom, he misses one. Now everybody remembers that. So that could be it, but I don't know. Again, I haven't been there to know how consistent those kind of misses have been.
We'll have to run that one by your guy, Greg Pinelli, too. Pinelli Passing Academy, by the way. You're wearing the hat right now for those folks
PBA.
watching YouTube. And yeah, so it's funny because also the Niners probably don't want to show much. And look, I don't think there's much to show in OTAs, but the days the media is there and there's people filming, I feel like it's always the same drills. It's the back drill and it's the rollout, right? I feel like that's the only drills I ever see from 49ers OTAs and in practices.
I saw someone post a clip of, and gosh, can't remember his name, but I just saw it on social media where it was Jimmy Garoppolo sprinting out and he just kind of misses a guy. And then they showed Trey Lance kind of just like miss a guy. One of the ones that Lance missed, because there's two videos I just keep seeing with Trey Lance missing a throw. One was an overthrow to one of those guys to catch the ball. But it was a throw that I've seen him throw for touchdowns. So it's like, y'all worried about this throw that he missed in practice. We talking about practice, man. Shout out to Allen Iverson. But I've seen him hit it for 2 touchdowns in the regular season. In the season. Yeah. So it's not something that I'm not. When it comes to Trey, that's not what I'm worried about, right? Like what I'm worried about is he throwing with timing and rhythm? How is he seeing the field? Is he starting to see the field the way Kyle wants him to see the field? Is he letting it rip? Because you hear about the conservativeness really from both quarterbacks, and it's like, Trey, you got someone on the line here. You're gonna hand Purdy the job, right? Like Purdy. Obviously, it's like his job to lose, but don't make it easy. And unless you come out and you're letting it rip and you're making these throws, you're going to make it easy. Like, why the check down? So those are the things that I care more about than a bag drill when they're working certain things. Like that stuff does it. And then that's the fan part, I think, where, it's just, fans want to eat everything. But to me, everything works in like progressions. And it's not so much that like an individual drills that I'm looking at. It's really more so like, man, I would love to see him in 7-on-7. I would love to see him in team. I would love to see him in the huddle. How is he commanding the huddle? Is he looking the guys in the eyes? Do they believe in him? How does he interact with his players after a drop? I heard there was 3 drops. He threw 3 passes that had got dropped the other day. How does he interact with them? Hey, man, hey, that's on me. Or, hey, I got you. I'm going to come right back to you. Those are the things that I care more about than seeing a pass be overthrown to some random coach.
Yeah, I've seen him make throws. I know what he can do physically. It's all neck up for me. Like, when do you have a grasp of it? When are you leader of men? All those things. I think that's really the important thing, and it's hard without a lot of reps to be able to do that.
He talked about having to see like kind of like a sports psychiatrist or something, right? What went into that? And then how is he coming out of that? Like just in a sense, what's he getting out of doing that? Did he lose his confidence? Like those are the things that I want to focus on more with him just throughout this process of, what it potentially could look like for the regular season for him. And you talked about, does he have a chance? And I mean,
yeah, like
he's not going to have a chance. Okay, if he doesn't have a chance, it's not going to be because of a bag drill and he overthrew a coach. Like, that's not going to be why.
Right. Like the competition really hasn't sped up, and it won't really get going until a little more live bullets are flying. At least a couple preseason games, and there's going to be at least 2 preseason games with no Purdy. And obviously training camp, and then just the whole vibe of how they've all worked and how comfortable the coaches are with the work that those guys that Darnold and Trey Lance have put in. Let me ask you this yes or no question to end it, Croc. If on the Mayoko timeline that he laid out today, if that 24 weeks from surgery, which is less than 6 months, if he hits right on that August 21st, he is cleared right before that third and final preseason game. No matter what Trey Lance and Sam Darnold do they have a shot to win the job?
No.
It's nearly impossible in that case, right?
It's nearly impossible. It is nearly impossible.
Like, how awesome would Trey Lance have to look in camp in those first 2?
Patrick Mahomes Jr.
Right. He would have to be pretty damn amazing.
And I don't project him being Patrick Mahomes Jr. So,
but that again, that's still the most aggressive timeline. That's everything goes perfect, no setbacks, and his arm snaps back to where it was before. And so we'll find out where that is. And I don't think the expectation still, I think people should chill out and be like, okay, somewhere week or so before the regular season starts, that's still on the aggressive side for Brock Purdy. So we'll see where they're at. And maybe Trey Lance could show enough that if there's any question about when Purdy is going to be cleared, that it buys him a game or 2 into the regular season. That's probably the best case scenario for Trey Lance right now.
No, Trey Lance's best case scenario was Purdy starting off on some type of pup list or something. Right. Yeah. And I don't see that happening. So
that was his best.
That was his best.
Traded somewhere with no Purdy and no Darnold. And here's the thing: he still might get traded now, right? Would he? I guess we'll save that. We got a Winky Wednesday coming tomorrow, because if that scenario happens, then what are we talking about? Are the 49ers really going to roll with 3 franchise quarterbacks into the season? So all that and more coming up on future episodes of Locked On 49ers. Appreciate everybody out there, all the everydayers. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.